For 31 years, my hands smelled like recycled office air and the plastic underside of a Bloomberg keyboard. Not a scent exactly, an absence of one. Out here, there's no absence of anything. It's 0547. The ground at this altitude, 3,680 meters, holds cold the way thick concrete holds cold, from the inside out. When I push my hands into the soil, there's a temperature differential between the surface and 6 inches down that I can track by feel now. Took me probably 2 months to develop that. The surface is cold. 6 inches down is colder still. Below that, the frost layer the Aymara call Caspi. It'll be gone by 9. I work before the frost releases. That's when the soil is correct. I don't have a word for why I started doing that. My name is Graham Elliott Prescott. I'm 66. I grew up in Darien, Connecticut. Princeton economics, then Wharton. Goldman Sachs fixed income in 1983, managing director by 1994. In 1999, I co-founded Greystone Capital Partners with $40 million from 8 investors I had cultivated over 15 years of knowing exactly what to say to people who needed somewhere to put their money. At our peak, 2022, we were managing $9.4 billion. I used to say that number in presentations the way you'd say the weather. I wound the fund down in March 2024. I was in Bolivia 11 days later. Goldman in 1983 was a particular kind of machine. The floor was loud. You could feel it in your sternum on days when the bond market was moving. I found that I liked the sternum feeling. I was also good at the thing they needed me to be good at. Fixed income macro is about understanding where interest rates are going better than other people who are also trying to understand it. You build a model over years. You feed it. You stress test it. The model becomes, over time, the most reliable thing you have. I was at my peak genuinely good at this. In 2008, we were up 31% on the year. That was the thesis. It worked for 20 years. In October 2022, I was standing at a podium at the Pierre Hotel, presenting to 340 limited partners. Slide 14. UK pension dislocation, opportunistic positioning. The Truss government had announced its mini-budget. Yields on the 30-year gilt went up 150 basis points in approximately 2 days. 847 pension funds got margin calls. The Bank of England intervened. Greystone had been short gilt since early September. Between September 23rd and October 14th, we made $340 million. I stood at the podium and I said, UK pension dislocation, opportunistic positioning. I heard my own voice say it. I was describing 847 pension funds getting margin calls as an opportunity. In the same tone I would use to say, please pass the salt. There was no technical error. The trade was legal, correctly sized, appropriately exited. I heard my own voice. I finished the presentation. The investors were happy. I drove home to the apartment I was renting in the East 50s and sat in the kitchen for probably 2 hours without eating anything. I couldn't construct the argument for why that moment was the moment it had broken, and not any of the 1200 moments before it. I couldn't find the inflection point in the data, which probably means it was a gradient I hadn't been monitoring because I was monitoring the wrong things. The 14 months after that were strange. The fund continued to perform. We were up 19.3 in 2022, up 11.7 in 2023. Nothing was broken. I was waking up at 3:47 a.m. every day for 14 months, not anxious in a way I could identify, running the portfolio inventory, the macro thesis, the decisions pending. But there was nothing in the inventory that needed to be done at 3:47. The running of it was the ritual. I was running it because it was the only thing I could do with the space. A position has a thesis, a size, an entry, and an exit. You build conviction. You size it according to your risk limits. You monitor it. You run it until the thesis plays out, or until the stop loss is hit and you exit. Every position has a defined end. I built positions in people the way I built positions in markets. Caroline, Oliver, Marcus, David. I sized those relationships according to available capital, time, attention, presence. I had stop losses. When the risk-adjusted return on a relationship no longer justified the exposure, I reduced the position. When Caroline said I was never actually here, she was describing with more emotional accuracy than she knew that I had been reducing the position for years without announcing it. I called it discipline. She called it something else. I still think she was wrong about the mechanics. I'm less sure she was wrong. I had a thesis on my son. High optionality relationship. I sized it wrong. That was the thesis. In March 2024, Marcus brought me a credit position. Indian water utility debentures. Genuinely asymmetric risk. I looked at the screen for 47 seconds. Then I said, "Wind it down." Marcus looked at me. "The fund," I said. He didn't argue. He understood immediately this was not a decision made in those 47 seconds. I was on a plane to La Paz 11 days after the last investor letter went out. The community where I ended up is 18 kilometers from Lica, Potosi Department. The house is adobe, 2 rooms, no electricity. Feliciana Mamani is 71. She has been farming this land her entire life. She is teaching me Aymara, a language with a distinction between things you know from direct experience and things you know from report. In English, you can use both in the same register, and nobody notices. In Aymara, you must mark the distinction every time you speak. I find this useful in ways I'm still figuring out how to describe. The risk limit sheet is on the wall beside the window. Max drawdown 8%. VAR limit $47 million. Position sizing rules. Nailed to the adobe with 2 rusted nails. I still check it sometimes, not because I need to, because checking it is the only ritual I kept. Out here I have no position in anything, just seeds in the ground and a family who doesn't speak English, and 11 months of not knowing if any of this is going to yield something. I keep waiting to feel like that's a problem. Some days it almost isn't. Bolivia. I want to say I have a new framework, a different model, a thesis out here. Actually, I don't have a thesis out here. That might be the first time I've said that sentence in my whole life. The sound when the hoe finds firm ground below the frost layer is a particular sound, dense, resolved, like a decision that has been correctly made. I know that's a metaphor, but this morning I want to say it isn't only one. The sound is physically real, and there is something that happens to my attention when that sound occurs that I cannot describe in technical language because it is not a technical event. I have been looking for that for 11 months, sometimes without knowing I was looking. The laminate is peeling at one corner. I keep thinking I should replace it. I haven't. The Pleiades are visible tonight. Feliciana says that means good rain. I've been running her model for 11 months. So far, her data is better than mine.